Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. I've been thinking a lot about choices, about those single moments that act like a switch on the tracks, sending your life down a path you never saw coming. Mine was a single click, a transfer of funds into a blockchain wallet, a decision that felt like a key to a rich luxury lifestyle, but was actually the first step into a labyrinth of loss and regret. It's a story about love and the corrosive power of obsession, about how the promise of money can become a more potent truth than the person sleeping next to you. It started with Alara, as all the best and worst parts of my life did. We had a life that was small but perfect, built on shared glances over cheap takeout and promises whispered in the dark. We weren't poor, but we were perpetually saving, always looking toward a future that felt just out of reach, a down payment on a piece of real estate that would finally make us feel like adults. Our combined savings were our sacred text, a testament to our discipline and our shared dream. Every dollar was a brick in the foundation of the life we were building together, and she trusted me to be the architect. That trust was the most valuable asset we had, more precious than any stock or bond, and I, in my infinite arrogance, decided to leverage it all on a ghost. The ghost's name was Ethelred, a name I'd stumbled upon in the deepest corners of a crypto forum, a place where digital prophets and desperate gamblers screamed into the void. It wasn't Bitcoin or any of the names you'd know. This was different. It was a phantom, a whisper of a project with a white paper full of jargon that felt like a secret language, a key to a door only a select few could unlock. I consumed everything about it, the technology, the roadmap, the community of believers who spoke of its potential with a religious fervor. The obsession took hold of me like a fever. I stopped sleeping, my nights spent illuminated by the glow of candlestick charts, my mind a whirlwind of market caps and trading volumes. I started using a VPN, not for anything illegal, but it made me feel like I was part of an exclusive, clandestine world of high-stakes finance, a feeling that was intoxicating. The world outside my screen began to fade. The taste of food became dull, conversations became noise, and Alara's presence, once the center of my universe, became a peripheral blur. The only reality was the flickering green and red lines, the pulse of the market that I believed was the heartbeat of our future. I knew I had to bring her into this world. I rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times, crafting a narrative of inevitable success, a surefire business strategy that would leapfrog us over years of tedious saving. I painted a picture of a life of passive income, of waking up richer than when we went to sleep. When I finally sat her down, the words flowed out of me with the conviction of a zealot. I told her our savings, our carefully hoarded real estate fund, was lazy money. I told her that traditional investments were a slow crawl when we could be on a rocket ship. I talked about risk not as a danger, but as a synonym for opportunity. I watched her face, the subtle shift from excitement to concern, the little furrow in her brow that I used to be able to read like a book. She mentioned her own idea, a small venture into dropshipping, a Shopify store she'd been researching. She had a whole plan, a niche market, a way to build something slow and steady. I dismissed it with a wave of my hand. I called it small time, a distraction. Why build a rowboat, I argued, when I was offering her a seat on a yacht? The heartbreak in her eyes should have been a warning sign, a blaring red siren. But I was colorblind to everything but the green of potential profit. My obsession had become a form of lie, a lie I told myself so convincingly that it became my truth. Reluctantly, she agreed. Her consent was a hesitant whisper, a sacrifice born of her love for me and her faith in my judgment, a faith I was about to exploit to its breaking point. The moment the transfer completed, the moment our life savings vanished from our bank account and reappeared as a string of characters in a blockchain wallet, I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated power. It was done. Our fate was now tied to the whims of an algorithm, and I was its master. The first few weeks were a blur of euphoria. Ethelred climbed. It didn't just climb, it soared. Our investment doubled, then tripled. I would show her the numbers on my phone, the screen glowing with a figure that was more than we had saved in 3 years. I saw it as validation, proof of my genius. I didn't see the fear in her eyes, the fear of knowing that something which goes up that fast can come down just as quickly. My life became a ritual of obsession. I'd wake up and check the price before I even said good morning to her. I spent my days on encrypted messaging apps, dissecting every piece of news, every rumor that could affect the price. I paid for subscription services, for trading signals, for anything that would give me an edge. I was no longer a partner in a relationship. I was a day trader, and our future was just another position I was managing. I started talking about things as if they were already real. The house we would buy, the vacations we would take, the freedom from the 9-to-5 grind. I was selling her a dream that was still just pixels on a screen. She tried to ground me, to talk about practical things like tax planning for these supposed gains or updating our health insurance. But I waved it all away as trivial. Those were problems for a different life, the life of the rich, and I was already living there in my mind. She stopped asking about the numbers. She stopped looking at the phone when I held it out to her. A quiet sadness began to surround her, an invisible wall I was too busy to notice I was building. I told myself it was temporary. This sacrifice, this period of intense focus was for her. It was for us. The lie had grown, and now it was a shield, protecting me from the truth of what I was becoming, a gambler who had mistaken a winning streak for skill. I was so focused on the destination, this rich luxury lifestyle I had promised, that I didn't realize the journey was destroying the one person I was supposedly doing it all for. The hope I was selling was becoming a poison, and the first casualty was the intimacy and connection that had once been the bedrock of our lives. The peak came on a Tuesday. The value of our crypto holdings hit a number that was, frankly, obscene. It was life-changing money, the kind that solves every problem you've ever had and a few you didn't know you did. I felt like a god. I walked through the world with an invisible crown, convinced of my own brilliance. I made a reservation at the most expensive restaurant in the city, a place we had only ever walked past, dreaming. That night, I was going to show her the numbers one last time and tell her we had made it. But fate, or maybe just the brutal logic of a speculative market, had other plans. As I was getting ready, a notification flashed on my screen. A dip. A small one, but it was there. I dismissed it as a healthy correction. But then another notification came, and another. The dip was becoming a slide. The slide was becoming a fall, and the fall was becoming an avalanche. The pre-celebratory champagne I had bought sat warming on the counter, its promise of celebration turning into a cruel joke as I stood there, phone in hand, watching our entire future evaporate in a cascade of red. The silence that followed the initial crash was heavier than any argument we ever had. It was a dense, suffocating blanket of failure. I didn't cancel the reservation, I just never went. I spent the entire night on the couch, my laptop open, watching the digital representation of our dreams get systematically dismantled by a wave of panic selling. The silence that followed the initial crash was heavier than any argument we ever had. It was a dense, suffocating blanket of failure. I didn't cancel the reservation, I just never went. I spent the entire night on the couch, my laptop open, watching the digital representation of our dreams get systematically dismantled by a wave of panic selling. Ilara didn't say a word. She brought me a glass of water at some point, her hand brushing my shoulder for a fleeting second, a gesture that felt more like a goodbye than a comfort. In the days that followed, I became a ghost haunting the wreckage of my own making. The vibrant green on my trading charts was replaced by a bloody, unrelenting red. My obsession didn't vanish, it mutated. It was no longer the hopeful obsession of a believer, but the desperate, clawing obsession of an addict chasing a loss. I started making reckless trades, trying to win it back on even more obscure, volatile coins, digging the hole deeper with every click. The debt began to pile up. I took out a loan, telling myself it was to buy the dip, a classic investment strategy. But it wasn't a dip, it was a grave, and I was just shoveling more dirt on top of us.
The confident visionary was gone, replaced by a frantic, hollow-eyed man who flinched every time his phone buzzed. Our communication broke down completely. What was there to say? Every word I could think of felt like a lie. I couldn't promise to fix it. I couldn't say it would be okay. I had gambled their trust, our security, our future, and lost on a catastrophic scale. Her sadness had also changed. The quiet disappointment had crystallized into a distant, detached pragmatism.
She started picking up extra shifts at her job, her exhaustion a constant, unspoken indictment of my failure. She moved with a purpose I had lost, a grim determination to maintain some semblance of stability while I was lost in the digital ether. The life we had built was gone. We were just two people sharing a rental space, the air thick with the ghosts of broken promises. I watched her one evening as she sat at our small dining table, her own laptop open. For a moment, a flicker of hope ignited in me. Maybe she was researching a way out for us, looking into debt consolidation or financial advice. But her expression wasn't one of worry. It was one of intense focus, of quiet creation. I saw her sketching logos, comparing color palettes, writing product descriptions. It was her Shopify idea, the one I had so arrogantly dismissed. A surge of irrational anger coursed through me. How could she be working on her little project when our world was burning down? It felt like a betrayal, a profound lack of respect for the gravity of our situation, a situation that I alone had created. I saw her life moving forward on a separate track while mine was derailed and on fire. This feeling festered, another layer of poison in the already toxic environment of our home. I felt my credit score plummeting with every missed payment, a numerical representation of my fall from grace. The dream of real estate was now a bitter joke. We were lucky if we didn't get evicted. My attempts to re-enter the normal workforce were humiliating. My resume, with its gap where I had been a full-time crypto investor, was a red flag. I had no tangible skills to show for my time, just the story of a monumental failure that I couldn't exactly put in a cover letter. I was a liability. The fear was constant. It was a cold knot in my stomach when I woke up, and a suffocating weight on my chest when I tried to sleep. I was afraid of the mail, of the phone ringing, of the look in Elara's eyes. Most of all, I was afraid of the truth. That I hadn't just made a bad investment. I had fundamentally misunderstood the world. I had mistaken luck for skill, arrogance for confidence, and a digital token for a foundation upon which to build a life. My entire business strategy was based on a collective delusion, and I had been its most fervent believer. The breaking point came a few weeks later. I received a letter from the lender I'd borrowed from, a final notice before they would begin legal proceedings. The number was stark, brutal, and very, very real. The debt was more than our original savings combined. I sat on the floor of our living room, the letter in my hand, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or the urge to trade my way out of it. I just felt empty. The fight was gone. I had hit rock bottom. Elara came home and found me there. She looked at the letter in my hand, then at my face, and there was no surprise in her expression. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment, the final, undeniable confirmation of our ruin. She sat down on the floor across from me, the space between us feeling like a canyon. I expected her to yell, to cry, to finally unleash the months of frustration and fear I had put her through. But she just sat there in the quiet, her calm more unnerving than any outburst could have been. She finally spoke, her voice even and clear. She told me she had been saving, a separate account I never knew about, a small portion of her paycheck squirreled away every month since the day I had transferred our life savings. It wasn't much, but she had been building her own lifeboat while I was drilling holes in our yacht. She told me she had used that money to start her Shopify store. She hadn't done it to spite me. She had done it as an act of survival. She knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my path was one of self-destruction, and she had refused to be dragged down with me. My betrayal wasn't just in losing the money. The true betrayal, the one that had severed us completely, was my dismissal of her. I hadn't just rejected her business idea. I had rejected her intuition, her pragmatism, her partnership. I had demanded her trust, and then I had proven myself utterly unworthy of it. The truth of it all hit me then, not as a thought, but as a physical blow. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was the smart one, the stable one, the one who had a real plan while I was chasing a fantasy. And I, in my hubris, had treated her like a child who didn't understand the complexities of the adult world. That night, I finally understood the full scope of my failure. It wasn't a financial failure, it was a human one. I had sacrificed our love at the altar of my ego, and the market crash was just the final brutal consequence of a bankruptcy that had started in my own heart months before. In the weeks that followed her revelation, our apartment transformed from a shared home into a silent, functional cohabitation space. The power dynamic had irreversibly shifted. I was a ghost, adrift in a sea of debt and regret, while Ilara was an anchor of quiet, relentless industry. Her Shopify store, born from the ashes of my financial ruin, was flourishing. The trickle of initial orders had become a steady stream. Our small living room, once my trading command center, was now her fulfillment station. It was filled with shipping boxes, packing tape, and the scent of the artisanal candles she sold. The irony was a physical pain. She was building a tangible, real-world business in the exact space where I had lost a fortune on an intangible digital dream. She never threw my failure in my face. She never said, "I told you so." Her victory was quiet, contained in the hum of her label printer and the confident click of her keyboard as she answered customer emails. Her success was a constant, humming rebuke to my arrogance. She paid the rent. She bought the groceries. She handled the bills that were still in our joint names, her own money now covering the debts I had accrued. I was living on her charity, a fact that stripped away the last vestiges of my pride. I tried to find work, any work, but my confidence was shattered. During interviews, I felt like a fraud. My grand talk of risk management and market analysis in the crypto space now sounded like the ramblings of a degenerate gambler. The failure had seeped into my bones, changing the way I walked, the way I talked, the way I met the world's gaze. I felt a desperate need to contribute, to be useful. I started helping her pack boxes, a menial task that felt like a penance. I would fold the cardboard, secure the products, and affix the shipping labels, each package a small monument to her foresight and my blindness. She allowed me to help, but with a detached sort of gratitude, the kind you'd show a well-meaning but slightly incompetent temp worker. We were partners in logistics, but the partnership of the heart was long dead. I was a component in her business strategy, not a part of her life. I spent my nights digging into the mechanics of what she had built. I looked at her website, her marketing, her customer acquisition strategy. It was brilliant in its simplicity. She had identified a niche, created a high-quality product, and built a community around it. It was a model of sustainable, low-risk growth, everything my crypto venture was not. This wasn't about chasing a 100x return overnight. It was about building something real, one sale at a time. The passive income she was generating wasn't a myth. It was the result of hard, smart work, and it was growing every day. I realized the full extent of what I had dismissed. It wasn't a little project. It was a lifeline she had built for herself, and now, inadvertently, for me too. The truth was that I hadn't just lost our money. I had lost my way so completely that I couldn't see the real opportunity right in front of me, the one presented by the woman I was supposed to love. One evening, after a long day of packing orders, she sat me down. The tone of her voice was different. It wasn't angry or sad. It was final. She told me she was moving out. She had found a new apartment, closer to a small studio space she was planning to rent for her expanding business. She said it all very calmly, as if discussing a logistical detail of her business plan. The words didn't register at first. I think a part of me, a deeply foolish and hopeful part, believed that my penance, my help with the boxes, my quiet subservience might be a path toward redemption. I thought that if I could just show her I had learned my lesson, we could somehow rebuild. But her decision had nothing to do with my lesson. It had everything to do with her survival. She explained that she couldn't build a future with someone who had so little regard for their shared security. She said the issue wasn't the loss of the money itself, but what the loss represented. The lie I had lived, the obsession that had blinded me, the unilateral way I had made a decision that affected both of our lives. I hadn't been a partner. I had been a dictator of our finances, and my reign had been catastrophic. She said she would always care about me, but she couldn't trust me. And without trust, love was just a memory. I tried to argue, to plead. I told her I had changed, that I understood my failure. I promised to spend the rest of my life making it up to her. But my words were weightless, echoes of the same empty promises I had made when I pitched her on Ethelred. My credibility was zero. My account was overdrawn. She stood up, and the finality of it was absolute. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an announcement. She was excising me from her life, not with malice, but with the cool precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. The tumor of my risk, my debt, my failure. The conversation was the real crash, the one that mattered far more than the nosedive of a cryptocurrency. The loss of our shared life was a far greater debt than any loan. I watched her walk out of the room, and I knew that was it. I was alone now. Not just financially bankrupt, but emotionally bankrupt too. The house, once a symbol of our future, was now just a rental I couldn't afford, filled with the inventory of her success and the ghost of my spectacular failure. The heartbreak was a profound physical ache, a hollowness that no amount of money could ever fill. I had chased a rich luxury lifestyle, and in the process, I had lost the only thing that had ever made my life feel truly rich. The days after Alara moved out were the quietest of my life. The apartment felt vast and empty, the silence punctuated only by the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of my own footsteps. The remnants of her business were gone, cleared out with an efficiency that was both admirable and devastating. She had left nothing behind, no stray candle, no roll of packing tape, no note on the counter. It was a clean break, a surgical removal of her presence from my life. I was left alone with the consequences. The eviction notice arrived, as I knew it would. The calls from creditors became more frequent, more aggressive. My world had shrunk to the four walls of that apartment and the crushing weight of my mistakes. For the first time, there was no one to blame, no market to curse, no external force to hold responsible. There was only me and the long chain of choices that had led me to this exact moment. The failure was absolute, and in its totality, it was strangely clarifying. The obsession with crypto, the frantic need to find the next big thing, was gone. The fever had broken, leaving behind a profound and painful exhaustion. I sold my laptop, the screen that had held my rapt attention for months, for a few $100s to cover immediate expenses. Getting rid of it felt like an exorcism. I started taking long walks, aimlessly wandering the city streets just to feel the solid pavement beneath my feet, a grounding contrast to the ethereal, unreal world of digital assets I had been living in. I watched people, couples laughing, families pushing strollers, and felt a pang of longing for the simple, tangible life I had thrown away. I realized that my pursuit of wealth wasn't about securing a future for Alara and me. It was about me. It was about my ego, my desire to feel smart, to feel like I had outsmarted the system. I wanted to be the hero of our story, the one who swooped in with a winning lottery ticket and solved everything. I hadn't wanted a partner, I wanted an audience. Alara's success with her Shopify store was the ultimate proof of my flawed philosophy. She hadn't tried to outsmart the system. She had simply worked within it, with patience, intelligence, and a genuine understanding of what people wanted. She had created value, while I had merely speculated on it. Her path was one of construction, mine had been one of demolition. A month after she left, a letter arrived. It wasn't a bill. The envelope was handwritten. It was from her. I opened it with trembling hands, expecting a final twist of the knife, a legal document, a request for repayment. But it was just a single sheet of paper with a check attached. The note was brief. It said, "This should cover the initial loan. I consider the rest of the debt yours. I don't want anything from you, but I don't want this tied to me either. I wish you well, Caleb. I hope you find what you're looking for." The check was for the exact amount of the loan I had taken out in a desperate attempt to salvage my crypto losses. She had paid off the most pressing part of the debt I had created. It wasn't an act of forgiveness, nor was it an invitation back into her life. It was an act of severance. It was her final, clean cut, freeing herself from the last financial shackle that bound us together. The gesture broke me in a way that the market crash never could. It was an act of grace I did not deserve. It was a final, painful lesson in the difference between us. Even in her departure, she was responsible, pragmatic, and in her own way, kind. I never cashed the check. I couldn't. It felt like blood money. Instead, I pinned it to the wall of the empty apartment. It became my focal point, a reminder not of the money, but of the character of the woman I had lost. It was a symbol of my rock bottom and the starting point for whatever came next. I got a job. It was nothing glamorous, working in the warehouse of a logistics company, not far from the studio space she was probably now setting up. I packed boxes. The irony wasn't lost on me. My days were filled with the physical reality of cardboard, tape, and shipping labels, a world away from the weightless ones and zeros I used to trade. It was hard, humbling work. But at the end of the day, I was tired in a way that felt clean. I was earning a paycheck, however small, and I started chipping away at the mountain of debt I had created. My redemption wouldn't be a dramatic overnight success story. It would be a slow, grueling crawl back to zero. It would be about showing up, day after day, and taking responsibility for the wreckage. I sometimes see her, not up close, just a glimpse of her across the street or her car driving past. She looks happy, confident. Her business is thriving. I know because I sometimes check her website, not out of lingering obsession, but out of a strange sense of pride and a deep-seated regret. She built something real and lasting, while I built a castle in the clouds that was destined to disappear. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from the financial hole I dug for myself, but the emotional recovery, the real work, has begun. The lesson was brutal, but I learned it. I learned that real wealth isn't a number in a blockchain wallet. It's the trust of the person you love. Real investment isn't about finding a 10-bagger. It's about the daily deposits of honesty, respect, and partnership. I traded it all for a ghost, and in the end, that's what I became. Alone, haunted by the echo of what I had and what I so carelessly destroyed. The journey back is long, and I'm just taking the first steps, but for the first time in a long time, my feet are on solid ground. Thank you for tuning in to Reddit Whispers. We've all faced moments when everything felt broken. What was your turning point? Leave it in the comments, because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now.